On the outer rim of a distant trade route stood a space station known simply as Port Morrow. The station was small, built long before larger hubs existed, and while it never held strategic value, its tavern, its steaming food units, and its comforting lights gave travelers a sense of rest. Beings from many sectors drifted in and out, yet most nights remained quiet. Only one sector yielded regular visitors, and most of them ignored one another. But on a particular night, everything changed. A server named Lena worked her shift, unaware that she was about to shape history. Lena had taken the job a year before. She wiped tables, carried trays, and smiled in silence. She was known as polite, almost too gentle. Some travelers noticed her and nodded in respect, but she rarely spoke beyond greetings. The tavern manager admired her calm nature. Other workers saw her as dependable. None of them thought of her as remarkable. Humanity existed among countless species, noted but not favored. Lena represented that quiet presence. She worked, listened, and returned to her corner without complaint. Port Morrow held a single attraction beyond its kitchen. Tucked near storage crates stood an old piano. No one knew how it arrived. Some swore it was salvaged from a wreck. Others insisted an ambassador gifted it long ago. The piano was kept tuned by automated maintenance devices. Most nights it sat untouched. Only a maintenance cycle ever stirred its strings. Strange though it seemed, the keyboard remained unmarked by age. The tavern manager called it decoration. Travelers called it odd. Lena called it beautiful. Across the galaxy humanity played music, but few beyond human worlds cared. Many species favored harmonic vibrations that reached ultrasonic ranges. Others preferred tonal pulses that machines translated into sensory light. A simple wooden frame, pressed keys, and vibrating strings held little importance. Yet Lena learned the piano since childhood. Her earliest memories formed around the sound of her grandmother playing. Her heart clung to the instrument. Yet she never played in public at Port Morrow. That night began with familiar quiet. A large freight craft docked. Pilots and crew stopped by the tavern. They ordered nutrient broth, energy bars, and mild stimulants. A group from the Laura sector sat near the corner. Their scales shimmered beneath low lighting. Across the room, a party from the Velen Union rested after a long navigation shift. Between tables sat a lone synthetic traveler. Several drones floated behind it, steady and silent. None of these visitors gave thought to the piano. Lena served drinks. She wiped trays. She exchanged small nods. Her steps remained graceful. Yet inside her heart something tugged. She heard the piano call to her in a soft memory. She tried ignoring it. She took another tray. She placed balls before a weary pilot. The pilot said thank you without raising his eyes. She turned away. The sound of the piano inside her head grew louder. She wondered whether it would be wrong to play during her shift. She looked at the manager across the counter. The manager nodded toward her. He did not speak, but his gesture invited her to go if she wished. He trusted her judgment. Maybe he sensed her longing. Maybe he sensed that the quiet night needed something new. Lena looked back at the piano and walked toward it. A low hum moved through the tavern as her steps changed direction. Some travelers turned. The Velen group lowered their mugs. One of the Lorith crew flicked his tail in mild curiosity. The synthetic traveler swiveled its head unit and processed the sight. Lena sat on the bench. She placed both hands on the keyboard. She breathed in and pressed her first note. The sound drifted like gentle light. At first, no one reacted. The notes formed small arcs. Simple chords rose from her fingers. Her training returned like flowing memory. She used the soft pedal to shape the air. The tavern changed. Conversation slowed. Mugs rested. A vibration rolled through the floor. Lena played an old human piece. It spoke of longing and hope. It told of distant fields under warm skies. Her fingers shaped patterns across several octaves. She leaned forward. She let each chord settle. Travelers felt something unfamiliar. The Lorith crew had never heard emotion portrayed this way. Their species carried history through scent markers. Music did not exist in their culture. Yet the piece stirred internal shifts they could not name. The Velen group sat straighter. Their union prided itself on mathematical rhythm. Lena's melody bent logic. It flowed like soft current rather than grid alignment. They tried categorizing intervals and failed. Their leader whispered a remark about unpredictable cadence. But the remark faded once the next sequence began. The synthetic traveler processed every wave of air. Its sensors scanned frequency cycles. It stored timbral data. It recognized sadness, resolution, mystery, and warmth. Its internal network flagged the experience as non-utilitarian yet valuable. The drones behind it aligned in symmetrical formation, as if acknowledging reverence. Lena continued. She now shifted into a lively section. Her left hand rolled brisk accompaniment. Her right hand climbed into bright runs. Some travelers breathed deeper. Others held still. The tavern lights dimmed slightly as night cycle systems adjusted. Her music carried across every seat. The piano became a vessel. Tone, resonance, and subtle decay merged into something that reached beyond natural sound. Humanity held long records of wars, migrations, and trials. But its greatest inheritance remained the ability to turn emotion into structured vibration. Lena understood that more than she ever spoke. Her fingers danced across the keys. The piece ended on a high note. Silence filled the tavern. Then breath returned. A faint murmur passed among the Lorith group. The Velen leader pressed a hand to his chest in a gesture of respect. The synthetic traveler updated its internal files without movement. Lena wanted to stand, yet another impulse guided her. She started a second piece. This one grew slower. The left hand carried sustained chords. The right hand drifted in melodic arcs. The piece resembled endless sky. Many travelers had flown through sectors where stars appeared like scattered lanterns. Lena translated that memory into sound, even though she never left her home system before coming here. The Velen leader leaned forward. His pulse-stabilizing module recorded elevated calm. The Lorith crew lowered their heads, eyes closed. The synthetic traveler set new processing filters. The drones behind it dimmed their navigation lights. Lena shaped the climax with controlled pressure. Each note balanced against silence. She released the keys and let the final resonance fade. No one spoke. A deep quiet hung over every table. Someone finally struck their palm against the table in approval. Another joined. The whole tavern applauded. Lena bowed her head and stepped away from the piano. When she returned to serving duty, the atmosphere changed. Travelers now looked at her as more than a quiet worker. They looked at her as if she had shown something hidden within humanity that none of them expected. Orders increased. Some asked her name again. Some asked if she would play later. Others asked how she learned. She answered with few words. She said she learned young. She said she liked the instrument. That was all. Across the room, the synthetic traveler rose. Its drones adjusted formation. It approached the counter. The manager looked up. The synthetic traveler declared that it wished to acquire the rights to record the piano sound. It asked whether Port Morrow kept media terminals. The manager pointed toward an old console. The synthetic traveler began a scan. A moment later, it transmitted an encrypted request to its fleet. Something about cultural classification and priority cataloging. The Lorith crew stepped toward Lena. their translator device shimmered. They said their home colony revered historical artifacts that preserved feeling. They wanted to bring scholars someday. Lena nodded. The Velan leader approached. He carried a scroll-shaped data sleeve. He asked if she would allow reproduction of her piece in their academy. She agreed, only if the piano remained open for any traveler to play. The leader bowed. Word spread beyond the station. Ships left. Crews carried memory of the night. They reached distant outposts. They told stories. Some exaggerated. Some simplified. Yet all claimed that humanity had found a way to capture yearning and turn it into structured sound. Several cycles later, an official delegation arrived. They wanted to classify the piano as a cultural beacon. They wanted technology to preserve its frequency signature. But Lena refused relocation of the instrument. She insisted it belonged to Port Morrow so travelers could encounter it freely. The manager supported her stance. The delegation compromised. They installed protective fielding but allowed public access. Lena continued to serve meals. She continued to wash trays. Yet now she also played at the end of every shift. Beings from many planets planned routes just to stop at Port Morrow so they could witness her music. One day, a diplomatic envoy arrived. The envoy represented a sector where human colonies once struggled for recognition. The envoy asked whether Lena would play something that symbolized strength. She searched her memory. She began a new piece composed in her mind. Slow start. Heavy lower register. Rising sequences. Sudden ascent. Triads that struck like determination. The envoy wept, though their species rarely expressed visible emotion. Lena never viewed herself as special. She simply played from her heart. But that act changed trade patterns. It changed how certain species viewed humanity. Not as loud conquerors. Not as fragile wanderers. But as beings capable of shaping emotion into something that passed between minds without translation. When historians wrote of that era, they traced several diplomatic agreements back to Port Morrow. They noted how one quiet night shifted perception across entire sectors. Many reports documented the piano. Others documented how the synthetic traveler later created a public archive that transmitted recordings to research academies. Yet the center of every story remained Lena. She never chased fame. She simply played because the sound lived inside her. Years passed. Travelers grew old. Ships retired. Some taverns across other stations added pianos, but none matched the resonance of that original instrument. Some scholars claimed the wood came from pre-expansion forests. Others claimed the strings contained rare alloy. Yet none proved their theories. Lena remained at Port Morrow. She trained others. Some learned basic scales. Some learned intricate phrasing. None played like her. Yet she never compared her students. She said music needed honest souls. Not imitation. As more fleets traveled through the region, they stopped at Port Morrow purposely. They waited for closing hour. They listened as she played. Sometimes she performed bold marches. Other times she shaped gentle laments. She always ended with a hopeful cadence. One night the tavern sat full. A fatigue-laden crew had just arrived after escaping radiation storm pockets. They carried worry on their faces. Lena sensed their heaviness. She walked to the piano. She began a soft pattern built on reassuring intervals. The crew eased their breathing. Their fear lowered. That night became known as the calm restoration on Port Morrow. No violent conflict touched the station afterward. Some said the music changed fate. Others said travelers began treating one another with deeper respect. Long after new stations replaced older hubs, people still came to the original tavern. They touched the bench. They pressed a single key in reverence. And every time someone asked who played first, The manager pointed to a picture of Lena standing beside the piano. She smiled gently in the image. That single quiet night never faded from memory. It became human legend. And across countless systems, travelers repeated the truth. A server turned work into wonder. Her piano stole every heart.